Now, Joanna, this is the second. Oh, wait, that's a spoiler, I think. Never mind. I
okay.
retract that statement, but it is the second one that you've recommended to us. I just want to make note. We are two gals who enjoy that. Welcome to Book Talk Etc., a podcast bound to grow your TBR. I'm Tina from TBR Etc.
And I'm Hannah from Handpicked Books.
This is a conversational podcast about books and more from two Midwest mood readers who are easily distracted by new releases. And this week we are chatting books and book selling with Joanna from This is a Bookstore and BookBug.
If you enjoy listening, we'd love for you to follow us on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app. And if you have a quick minute, please consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts or sharing us on social media. It truly helps us connect with other book lovers.
Hi, Hannah.
Hi, Tina. And hi, Joanna. How is everyone doing today?
Hanging in there. How are you, Joanna?
I'm chilly, but I'm warmed by the prospect of this conversation. It's so cold here in Kalamazoo, but yes. The bookstore has been warm, and yes.
Yeah,
I'm in
Chicago, and so we just got word it's e-learning tomorrow. My job even is like, we're staying remote, so I'm like, okay, don't have to tell me twice. So definitely we will be warming, hopefully, our listeners' ears. It's a little warmer by the time this episode drops. I'm not quite sure, but everyone, I just wanted to introduce our guests. We're delighted to be joined today by Joanna, the caretaker of This is a Bookstore and BookBug in Kalamazoo, Michigan. So welcome officially to Book Talk, Etc.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. And so this is our Bookstore Browse episode, and we are so excited to talk to you a little bit more about your store and the book selling process. Of course, we're going to get into some recommendations. I have to ask, though, tell me what being a caretaker of the store means.
Well, so this is what I call myself, a caretaker, right? I take care of both people in the store, but the whole environment of the store, the physicality of the store, the responsibilities of the store. It's truly my responsibility to take care of it. And I think when I started calling myself that instead of the owner or the co-owner of the store, it was a realization I had come to that I would answer a lot of questions for people who said, how are you connected to the store? Or can I talk to the owner? And I didn't like the word owner. And I maybe never did. It became something for me where I understood the way we've grown in Kalamazoo and the way that the community has embraced us. It really, truly belongs to the people who frequent it and to the city itself. It's, and I have to check myself when I say that sometimes. It does in every way. It belongs to the people who choose to make purchases with us, who choose to have conversations with us, who give us recommendations, who make us a better place. So I believe that wholeheartedly. I did confuse somebody once when I said that. When I said this, the bookstore belongs to Kalamazoo, they said, oh, so the city owns it? And I was like, wait, well, no, I pay the bills.
Figuratively, yeah.
Right? And I take care of it. But that's what the word caretaker for me means, is that it's my responsibility to shepherd it into an authentic provider of books for our community, and one that celebrates not only the stories that are being published that I love, but the ones that others love, and the stories that come to us right on a daily basis, just the personal stories and the curiosities that lead people to want to read a book, which often can be just such a humbling and beautiful experience to be invited into a time in either a young person, a middle-aged person's, anybody's life when they need a story to carry them through a transition in their own life.
How long have you been? I don't know as much about the store. I know, Hannah, this is closer to you.
Yes.
How long have you been around?
So we'll be celebrating our 18th anniversary as a operating bookstore, but our journey and our growth has been a unique one. We were founded as a children's only bookstore. So BookBug is our founding name, and we were founded on the heels of what is the Kalamazoo Promise, which is a famous and groundbreaking promise that was made to all of the public school attending children in Kalamazoo, that their higher education would be paid for. And my dream of opening a bookstore was inspired before that, but it certainly was fueled by a community saying to its young people, you matter. Your financial circumstances should not inhibit your goal to achieve higher education, and your curiosities and your Growth is we are invested in that. So I wanted to provide a space where children could see themselves, could find stories, could see in physical form the beauty of children's books, especially. So our history is very much informed by my own passion for children's books and where I was at that point in my life. Our growth and our extension with This Is a Bookstore and our broader space at This Is a Bookstore with our cafe was an affirmation of what had always been my hope too, to provide books for all readers, to provide a meaningful gathering place that could host author events and conversations around books, and could enable me to read both children's books for BookBug and my buying for BookBug, and to read what I had always been reading alongside my life's journey, which is primarily contemporary fiction, narrative nonfiction that really met me where I was in my life. So that's the short, long answer to who we are and what our history is.
Oh, I love that. You did such a good job giving us an idea and setting that all up. I did not know that This Is a Bookstore and BookBug was kind of originally the foundation of that was the Kalamazoo Promise. I didn't know that. That's such a cool piece of historical information about your store.
And also, Joanna, Hannah and I don't often do interviews. So, I mean, maybe it's obvious to you, but we are sort of also learning the ropes too. Normally, it's just us cackling to one another. So if at some point we are pausing, it's because I'm like, okay, trying to make space for Hannah, that sort of thing. So we are, even though it's been 5 years of the podcast, I'm still learning how to do this. So in case you're like, what are they doing? It's us trying to get our cadence correct.
A new segment to the show. So
Exactly. It's beautiful. I love it.
Okay, good.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. Yes. And I had not heard of the Kalamazoo Promise. That's definitely something I want to look into. I'm in Chicago. We have so many great indies here, but this is a part of why we wanted to do this segment on our main show. It's something we had for our patrons all of last year. We've been talking to booksellers, and we really wanted to try and bring these special and unique stores nationwide and even, worldwide. We have a lot of listeners that are not in the US as well. And I think it's just so great that we're able to give this exposure. And I actually really appreciate you all DM'd us. So I don't know if it was you or your business partner. Do you remember how you heard about Book Talk, etc.?
So Alice, who's a recent bookseller for us, but a super avid reader and an avid listener of podcasts, not just book talking podcasts, but science podcasts, all sorts of podcasts. And her energy is amazing. But she is a frequent listener to you all. She also is just a loving book talker, and she book talks regardless of whether she's in the store or in her, her school PTO meetings or everywhere. I mean, she's just a book talker. So I think she's friends with you, even if she doesn't know you. She feels this kinship to the conversations that you provide. And she's always, even as a bookseller, and that's what a true reader is, a true lover of books, is somebody who's just like, I can never know enough, and I may never read enough either, but I love hearing what people are reading and what they're talking about, and I'm gonna find my next great read via next great conversation.
That is so great. And I was wondering too, it's so funny, my daughter the other day, she asked me, she's like, Mom, why are you always talking about books? And I was like, great. I'm glad that is she's 5. I'm like, great. I'm glad that is what is coming across. But also there's worse things she could be asking, right? I'm like, that is what I think, being a book talker is really sort of having that conversation in all spaces, whether it's a bookstore, whether it's a podcast. But thanks for indulging me. I was curious. I'm like, I wonder how they heard of us. So, hey, Alice, thanks for reaching out to us.
Yes.
So we will kick things off, as we always do, with our Loving Lately. And I don't want folks to. Okay, so my Loving Lately is the Dollar Tree. Indeed. And I always feel like when I bring something like this, people are going to be like, seriously, the Dollar Tree. But I'm very serious when I say I have been so impressed with specifically their skincare lately. So I'm holding a couple products in my hand here. Dollar Tree, right? Everything's what, $1.25. So these things are very comparable to what you would get at the drugstore or even at a Ulta. You know me, I'm a skincare aficionado, so I know what I'm talking about. Specifically, the Hemp Dreams Oil Mist. I'm obsessed with this thing. It's basically a facial mist, and what I love is you can just spray it on. It just makes your skin refreshed throughout the day. So I don't always have a demonstration, but since it's here, I thought I would. I also love their eye serum. This eye serum, again, $1.25, better than some of the ones that are much more expensive. And then I don't feel bad using a lot of it. I tend to be like somebody that likes to use up products. So this, again, the eye serum that I'm showing, it's a red bottle by Be Pure. Fantastic. I've also really liked their vitamin C brightening jelly eye masks. These things, I always like the concept of a jelly eye mask that's disposable, but the Peter Thomas Roth ones that I think these are sort of a dupe of are very expensive, and I could never bring myself to pay that much for them. But these, it comes with something like 20 pairs, and I'm like, these are fantastic. My husband's been using it as well. My girls have tried to use it, but I'm like, it's a little early for you. But anyway, I just wanted to spotlight Dollar Tree and specifically their skincare aisle. But I feel like I'm a Dollar Tree lover, but I think their products have been getting better and better, which I think is so great because it's an affordable price point. So, listeners, if you have a Dollar Tree in your area, I definitely recommend checking them out, checking out their skincare section, and then obviously anything else. They always have some sort of holiday or other good things going on. So, my loving lately is the Dollar Tree skincare aisle.
I love watching Dollar Tree hauls on TikTok.
Oh, same, same. I don't know why. I think it's so
They're great.
fascinating. And this is where I got the not this specifically. This I just came across on my own. This stuff. Nina Poole. Do you know who that is? Anyone know who Nina Poole is? They are a creator, and they do a ton of dupes videos. And I had initially saw them talk about this, and then it was a slippery slope. That's what brought me in. At any rate, I also recommend their channel as well.
Nice. Love a creator recommendation as well.
Yes. Joanna, I don't know if you have something that you've been loving lately, but the floor is yours if you want to share.
So yeah, I am gonna recommend a TV show that's streaming now on Netflix. Partly because, right, for me, TV, either in complement to books and or in necessity during the winter months when we're freezing cold, TV is my comfort at the end of my day. And a lot of times a TV show for me needs to serve a couple purposes. It needs to keep my attention and keep me informed somewhat, but it just needs to be a little bit simple and playful and comforting. Maybe especially right now for several different reasons. But the one that I've been watching, The Man on the Inside, with Ted Danson, who is an aged actor now, who I came of age with myself in the 80s, it's both quirky and curious and smart enough to keep me like guessing about who did what. He's part of this team of slapshod private investigators, and he has all of these really clever lines and engagements with people that he's basically spying on. But it's playful, it's funny, it's weird, it's cinematically interesting, it's warm, right? There obviously is conflict, as with any great story, but it's not stressful for me, which I think for TV, that's what I'm willing to take in. And I like his performance. I like the other actors in it. I think they're all just curious and funny. So The Man on the Inside, streaming on Netflix right now. It is a perfect cap to your day, along with a cup of hot coffee or chocolate. I do drink coffee at night. That's weird too.
I do
Maybe
too.
that's my favorite thing.
Yes, so does Hannah. That's like a sub loving lately is a cup of coffee at night.
Midnight coffee.
I think that sounds perfect for exactly what you're describing, where you're still entertained and it's, got depth and nuance to it, but it's also you're not having to like, wait, who's that person? Who's that person? And really like dial in when you're watching it. I love a good TV recommendation because I don't often watch TV. So when people mention them, I'm like, good, because I know so many people are always looking for new shows.
Yeah, I'd seen that one pitched to me on my Netflix profile, but I hadn't heard anybody talking about it. So I'm glad that I finally kind of have a little inside scoop as to what it's about. And it does sound like something that I would enjoy watching. I am also going to bring a TV show-ish. I'm going to bring a docu-series that I recently watched all of this past week. It's called Spy High, and it's a documentary series on Prime Video. It is a 4-part true crime documentary series, and it revisits a shocking real world surveillance scandal from 2010. It starts out with 15-year-old Blake Robbins when he was accused in high school of selling drugs based on a photo that was taken in his own bedroom, though. And this triggered a nationwide controversy. It turns out the school district had activated the webcams of the students who had school issued computers, and they did this with hundreds of school issued laptops without students or parents' knowledge. And they used this to track devices, and they captured tens of thousands of images of students inside of their own homes. So the series unpacks the ensuing lawsuits, the privacy violations. There was racial profiling that happened during this whole scandal, and just a lot of other broader ethical questions about digital surveillance in schools and also in other contexts and settings as well. What I found especially interesting about this particular docuseries is how much it invites you to think about motivation, and that goes from both the school district and from the families that were involved in this investigation as well. It definitely raises a lot of real questions about why certain parents pushed forward and why certain parents were almost forced to not push forward with the investigation, and how those family dynamics shaped the narrative, really complicating what initially feels like a very clear cut privacy violation. It does get blurry, and it was really interesting to think about those questions. And ultimately, this was just a really messed up situation. It should have never happened. If I wanted to say one thing critical about the series, is that I don't think it needed to be 4 parts. The story itself is really strong, it's very watchable, but it does feel stretched out and a little bit repetitive. But that said, the core reporting is really solid. The storytelling is really engaging, enough to carry you through the whole thing. I think where this really succeeded is sparking timely conversations about privacy, about surveillance, systemic issues in school around race and other systemic problems in the public school system, like including power in the age of technology, especially when those systems are used on children. I thought that the questions it raised were really urgent and worth sitting with. So this was just a really interesting docuseries, especially if you want true crime, but maybe true crime that doesn't involve like a homicide or something like that happening. I always think that it's interesting to bring more true crime podcasts, series, things like that, that don't necessarily involve a murder or something like that. This was a totally different kind of crime that was taking place, and it was interesting to follow along. And that was Spy High, and that's a docuseries on Prime Video.
My mouth was just agape when you were
I
explaining
know.
this. And part of it's
Yeah.
because, frankly, I've had people in my life who cover up their little cameras on their computer with
Mm-hmm.
like a post-it. And I was always like, no one's getting in there. What are they going to look for? And boy, do I have egg on my face because that is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm going to have to watch that because I'm desperate to know what happens after that.
Yeah, it was really interesting. And like I said, obviously the situation that happened was just not cool, but you do kind of find out some of the school's perspective too, and what was going on at the school. And while it obviously is not any justification or anything like that at all, it was definitely like, oh, I didn't, like you just,
Yeah.
yeah, just some things were brought up that you wouldn't expect while watching it.
Dang. Okay. Well, I feel silly for mine now, but this is what we
That's
do for
not silly.
I got a new facial spray. I don't know about you guys, but
Not silly. Not silly.
I love it.
I love it too, right? We are multifaceted over here.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I also wanted to tell you about my latest read. And I actually semi brought this with Joanna in mind, knowing that we're doing a bookstore browse episode, because the book that I brought largely takes place in a bookstore. So it is How to Read a Book by Monica Wood. And man, this one was okay. So this is what my in-person book club with my friends read this month. We're meeting later today, so I'm very excited to see what everybody thought about it. This is not something that I would typically rise to the top of my TBR, but I'm really happy that it did because I thought this was just excellent. So you're following 3 characters in it. primarily. You've got Violet, who is 22 from rural Abbott Falls, Maine, and she is being released from prison after serving 22 months for a drunk driving crash that killed a local kindergarten teacher. Harriet Larson is the second point of view, and she is a retired English teacher who runs the prison book club. And she is facing the prospect of an empty nest and is sort of looking for what's going to get her going in this next phase of life. And then you're following Frank, who is a retired machinist, and you do find out what that is while reading. And Frank, you find out that Frank was married to the woman who was killed by Violet. And these three have a chance encounter at the bookstore in Portland after Violet gets released from prison. Because she goes there essentially when she was about ready to be released. They were in the middle of a book. She was like, I want to finish it. So she went to this bookstore and explained her situation. And in doing so, ran into Harriet. Frank sees her, panics because obviously he recognizes her from the trial. So that's basically what you're following is these three characters who are in all different phases of their life. And this is a story of found family. And I love a good found family story where you're spending your life with people that you wouldn't otherwise expect, but it ends up just being this situation that is really just makes you into who you are as a person. I thought this was very compelling too. And I will say it starts off, you're in the prison system with Harriet and the other women inmates and the other women who are incarcerated. And I got hooked right away. I really, really like the voice that the author gave to the characters. She also told this story with a lot of heart. So there was not judgment passed. You get a little bit of the backstory about the women in prison. And what I love is that she was able to give us that without blame. It was just sort of, here's what happened. Here's how they know each other. And I just really appreciated that. If I had a critique, my only thing that I would say is I wish that everyone who gets released from being incarcerated could get this second chance. And I know that's not often the case. And I was sort of like, I loved it. And it was this hopeful story. And I wish that was the case for more people. This is also about the power of book club. And they were having this conversation in the very beginning. A lot of the women, so Harriet is trying to like bring all these different books, like maybe they'll like poetry, maybe they'll like this. And like, it was about one book they all hated, but they had said that was their best discussion that they had. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you put words to what I feel, right? It's always fun when there's a book that has a lot of divisive opinions. I loved Violet. I thought she was a great character. And there was sort of, there's action. It's a very character driven story, but you do get to follow these characters as they go on through the next, I want to say maybe a couple years of their life. I really enjoyed it. The ending was excellent. And I highly recommend this book. This one is How to Read a Book by Monica Wood.
I feel like based on that title, that is not the story that I would expect.
Hate the title. No offense to anybody involved. But I'm like, how to read a book. Like yes. And I don't like that, but I will say it makes sense having read it,
Sure.
what they were doing and sort
After
of
having read it.
after
Yeah.
having read it. Yeah. But you're right.
Yeah.
At first I'm like, what is this? A how-to book? What's going on?
Yeah. No, I love
Which is
when
so
that,
important actually in book selling, right? The title and marketing, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But right, it can be problematic. It can be problematic to hand that book to somebody who can't get past the title and has some assumptions about it. Yeah.
Yes. Oh,
That's such a good point.
I'm guilty of that.
Joanna, do you want to share with us your latest read, a brief synopsis, and then your thoughts about it?
Sure. Currently, I'm reading Theo of Golden, and the only reason I'm reading that is the frequency with which so many others were reading it towards the end of the holiday season and asking us for it, and its journey, its unique journey from being a self-published small story into this sort of blossoming phenomenon. I had some reservations about diving into it, even when I first started reading it, because Theo narrates it. He is a octogenarian. He continuously calls himself an old man. He's this very gentle soul, which makes him this comforting narrator. He moves to Golden, which I believe is a fictional town in Carolina, that right, either north or south. It's really not that important to the story, but that he has never lived there. He finds a makeshift home in a cafe, and which displays dozens and dozens of hand-drawn portraits of various individuals. And he is quite taken by all of these portraits and makes it his mission to sort of gift the portraits back to the individuals who the artist made them for. So he had a long career and a successful life financially, and has, for several reasons that become slowly uncovered, chosen to move to a place where nobody quite knows him and where he can give back in some way that feels purposeful to him. And that way is his gentle connections and reaching out to these quiet and often marginalized and strange individuals who have had their portraits done by also this really unique artist who is wandering through life and really hasn't found commercial success through his art, but needs to keep drawing and needs to keep looking at the world and looking at people. So the book is really a meditation on what makes a life purposeful and how do we measure a life. And I think because it's in the voice of this old man who keeps referring to himself as an old man and sort of deferring to the beauty that he sees around him, including in these individuals who he seeks out. I feel like for the readers that I know who have needed it, it gives them both hope and the ability to say to themselves, a life is measured by seeing beauty and by giving yourself to others or offering yourself to others in really gentle and caring ways, which Theo really does. I think the critique that I would have of it, and I love it. It carried me through sort of what felt like a particularly dark few days of digesting real life stories in a very necessary and wonderful way. The critique I think I would have is that some readers who need plot to carry them or action or really like intense conflict, there are several moments of conflict and oddities that happen, but there isn't one dramatic moment of reckoning. I think for some readers, Theo will feel inauthentic, not for a reason that they want it to. I think he will feel authentic, and he did absolutely feel authentic to me, because I think the world that we live in right now doesn't permit us to behave the way that Theo does on so many levels.
Mm-hmm.
And we maybe want to, and we want to find somebody like Theo, and we can't quite believe that he exists for quite tragic reasons, in part because we don't have the freedom to seek out strangers and recognize their beauty, or to maybe have the time and the privilege to be able to just witness life for its wonder and its many beauties. So some people might feel frustrated by that or feel like, who is this Theo? Who is this writer? But clearly this writer has hit a nerve, and he hit my nerve.
Mm-hmm.
And I do recommend Theo of Golden for any reader.
Fantastic.
You described that so beautifully.
I know. We heard about it from some of our patrons who had recommended it. Like you said, a lot of people were reading it last year, and I have a copy. And when it came in the mail, speaking of book titles, I was like, what's this? Like, I don't know. I didn't know what Theo of Golden was. And then I had heard people recommending it, but the way you describe it sounds like it would be something that I would enjoy. And I almost wonder, I feel like it would be a good pairing with How to Read a Book by Monica Wood, in that some of these, the chances that Violet was given made me think, gosh, I wish this was the way for everyone. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But so often people's privilege doesn't allow for that. But anyway, yeah, good recommendation.
Do you feel like, because the way I've heard you describe this book and a couple others, do you feel like this might be a good book for people who like Frederick Backman or something like that? Because I feel like his books tackle a lot of those topics.
Absolutely.
I don't know. That's just been something I've been thinking about. Oh, okay. Awesome. I love Frederick Backman.
That's perfect. I think it's a perfect comp.
Perfect. Okay. My latest read is Coffin Moon by Keith Rosson. And this is a completely different book from both of the ones that we have both talked about.
I was like, a little different, but
a little different. I'm
very
bringing a
excited.
vampire horror novel. So we're gonna switch up the vibes a little bit. This is one of those books that grabbed me almost immediately and didn't let go. I'm so excited to talk about it. This story follows Dwayne, who is almost exclusively referred to by his last name in this story, which is Minor. And Minor is a Vietnam veteran who is recently returned home, and he is trying, sometimes barely, to stay sober. He runs the bar beneath his apartment, which is a bar owned by his wife's parents, but very much operated and lived in by him. And he shares the space with his wife, Heidi, and his niece, Julia, who they have guardianship over. From the start, there is this feeling of tension simmering underneath the surface. There's trauma, responsibility, addiction, and the weight of trying to keep everything together. And then things go completely sideways. Minor gets pulled into a very sticky and violent family situation tied to some kind of like gang deal or something of the like. And from there, the story spirals into a long and very brutal journey that is very much filled with violence and gore and also supernatural elements. And yes, this is a vampire novel. I don't always love vampire stories. I can be pretty picky about them, but this is genuinely one of the best vampire books I have read in a long time. And a huge part of that comes down to Rosson's writing. The action starts almost immediately. You are dropped straight into the chaos, and you get a very quick dose of violence and gore right away. But what really impressed me is how none of that comes at the expense of the characters and their development. Even in the most intense and fast paced scenes, Rosson is still developing these people, both the villains and our protagonists. You are inside their heads. You are learning who they are. You're learning what makes them tick, what they're afraid of, what they regret, and what they're willing to sacrifice, all while these terrible and bloody and horrific things are happening all around them. I feel like that balance is really hard to pull off, and I thought that Keith Rosson did it really well. This book is also doing a lot thematically. There is found family here, deeply so. There is addiction and recovery. There is tenderness alongside brutality. There is lore, and we definitely get to know why and how certain supernatural things are happening, but it never overwhelms the story. And there is also a coming of age element, in part because the book is told through the perspective of Julia, Minor's niece, watching the world through her eyes, especially as it becomes more violent and more supernatural, more scary. She's dealing with grief too, and that adds an emotional layer of the story that really stuck with me. If I have one critique of this story, it is the pacing. It is broken into chunks of time. And while I really appreciate that this is a 320 page standalone, I really wish we had more of those, especially in this genre. I actually think I might have loved an even longer version of this story, which I feel like I don't say very often. I would have liked to see some of those time jumps maybe spread out a little bit more, letting certain relationships and consequences breathe a little bit. But that said, this is a small complaint in the grand scheme of things. There are moments in this book that are weird and tender. There are moments that are outright gruesome and brutal. There is a lot of excitement, a lot of emotional weight, and a very surprising amount of heart. And one thing I wanted to note is that I feel like this book begs to be adapted into a video game. The entire time
Ooh.
I was reading it, I kept getting The Last of Us vibes, that protective, broken father figure with this young girl navigating a really terrifying world, just with vampires in this one instead of zombies. It was cinematic, it was atmospheric, and incredibly visual. So, in case you couldn't tell, I loved this book. And as soon as I
Yay.
finished it, I went straight to the story graph to see what else Keith Rosson has written because I absolutely want to read more from him. If you are even remotely interested in vampire stories, or if you like character driven horror with emotional depth, then I think this book is worth your time. And that is Coffin Moon by Keith Rosson.
I immediately opened the story graph and added it to my TBR.
So good.
I tend to
love
do
that
that when
too.
we're recording. I'm like, oh, I'm going to add this, tag it as Hannah recommended. So if anyone follows me over there, they probably can tell when we're recording because I always add at least one or two. But really good job on
Mhm.
both of those books. I am excited that we have 3 winners too, because sometimes that doesn't always
They're not
happen.
all winners.
They're
Yeah.
not all winners, but that's okay. There's value to all types of book reviews. So I definitely, though, Joanna, want to talk more about the store and the book selling process. So if you don't mind, kick things off. The first question we usually ask is tell us about your store and what makes it special and unique. But we already got that very interesting backstory. That's very unique. And I would like to know a little bit more about your day to day and what it looks like, sort of, as you run the store.
Do you really want to know? I don't know. Do your listeners want to? This is what I
Yes,
always
I
say,
do.
right? I know, and I love, and I keep wanting to do one of those TikToks, like the imagined experience of the bookseller,
Yeah, yeah,
reading
yeah.
and reviewing and engaging really beautifully with every customer, and the reality of operating a bookstore, and especially so our This Is a Bookstore location is close to 5,000 square retail space. Maintaining that space is no small job physically. My day varies greatly. And I always answer that question saying, right, like so I never know what the priority might be. I always have my priorities, right? I order every day. I generate restock orders every day. I love that dance. I love seeing what customers are buying the day before and what has been bought many times before that and what is newly being bought. I love seeing that and getting that peek into that story of my community and what is resonating with them. So generating orders is definitely something I do every day and is a priority, but that priority can get shifted back if we have a physical need that needs to be met, including an unexpected shipment that arrives that needs to sort of have my attention earlier rather than later, even though certain booksellers are always receiving each weekday. I am, yeah, doing a lot of the marketing for the store. So thinking about what is going in our next newsletter, what front list titles we're needing to promote, how we are thinking about scheduling our own book clubs and what titles are being chosen for those. So yeah, day to day, honestly, but the physicality of it, I can't underestimate. For anybody who dreams of opening any kind of small business, honestly, but bookstores maybe especially. I know we all as book lovers know that books don't weigh nothing. Um, and the reality of having
Yes.
to take care of a place that at least pretends to organize them in a system that where they can be found easily, where they can be recognized easily, that also takes seriously its responsibility as an independent bookstore to platform
Mm.
those titles that aren't being platformed by millions of dollars of marketing budget from their publisher and or uh, um, in the front windows of big box book retailers as a result of those millions of dollars that publishers, right? So
Mhm.
those kinds of things, having my eyes on those things on our displays, as do honestly all of our booksellers. So a big part of my role too, as what I call myself the caretaker, is caretaking to our staff and making sure
Mhm.
our staff has what they need on a daily basis, that they are communicating with each other about the flow of their own work and what the expectations of that is, that the right things like online orders are getting processed in the mornings early before the flow of customers usually emerges later into the morning and then higher into the afternoon and certainly the after school crowds. So my days vary greatly. Still, my greatest joy, whether or not I am able to be all the time, is being on the floor and engaging honestly with new people who I don't know and who don't know me. My favorite question that I get at the bookstore is, "Do you work here?" Despite the fact that I have worked there for 18 years and do everything. I love when somebody doesn't recognize me and wants to ask me that question as a person who
Mm.
may be able to give them a recommendation or guide them towards their next great read, or if they have an idea about some kind of gathering they want to have at the bookstore, which also is something that we quite intentionally built. This is a bookstore with the idea of the flexibility of the space, the ways that we can arrange conversations within the space, the ways that we can welcome musicians and or spoken word artists into our space is something really important to us. So I also do a lot of the event planning, which is no small task for anyone who knows that, how many messages back and forth to the parties involved and how much thought and clarity needs to go into inviting community to those kinds of gatherings. If that is your intention, we're hosting again, we expect, and possibly even more this year, to host grown-up book fairs. We'll have one in February that is always sort of love themed or book love themed. Right, tapping into what, right, at least my generation and millennials certainly, right, feel for this like deep love of the experience of having been invited to take some time away from their classroom and go to the book fair and see all of the great new books and get to choose some. And for those of us who are lucky enough to have parents who said, we'll there are restrictions on a lot of things, but maybe not books. We remember that fondly, and that experience, that being allowed to browse books and choose the ones that you love, and maybe as an adult have a grown-up beverage, which we're lucky enough to be able to provide in our space also, alongside a great shopping tote, which is always something we provide on those evenings also. And this year we'll be adding some trivia games and prizes to those evenings. So things like that occupy a lot of my brain space and some of my back room space. But yeah, I began by saying the physical stuff, right? There's never not a floor to mop. There's never not a bathroom to take a look at, to restock the supplies of. And there's always books to be unpacked and vigilantly recorded and received. So that process, so I have become quite slightly obsessed with it. It was not something that motivated me to be a business owner. I was actually quite intimidated by the idea of managing all of the data and being accountable to my inventory and watching it and watching the flow. Now actually, I love it. I do call it a dance. It's its own story and its own kind of empowering way to look at who our community is, what they're reading, and what they care about.
I love what you had said. I mean, one, yes, I do think that people can sometimes romanticize the life of being a bookstore owner, right? You're constantly, reading, and maybe you're doing some of that, of course, but there's a lot more to it. I love what you said, though, that you platform books that don't have the millions of dollars behind them, the millions of marketing dollars behind them. I'm wondering, in what ways are you able to do that?
I mean, one is the agency we have to make that decision, right? We're not answering to anybody. We don't have relationships with the publishers where we make any sort of agreements to put any book anywhere, right? So right now, our front table happens to have a theme of self-purpose and peace, right? Which is a theme that we interpret and that we bring many times small press titles onto, and or books that we happened to read that really fueled us on that theme and that may not be recognized by others. Backlist titles that have, right, sort of settled into their presence, like they're still in print, but they're not being platformed in any other way but by a simple hand putting them into another simple hand, but also onto a front table at our store, right? That's literally what I do talk about and what I was somewhat naive to when I entered the business. And what, big retail in America, the reality is that big retail answers to big industry, right? Including food industry, right? Like where placements happen in grocery stores is largely dictated by agreements between big food corporations and large grocers. So the same thing is mimicked in the publishing industry, and the freedom that we have as independents is literally we own the space, right? It's our space to get to say what we want. And I do take that responsibility seriously to both reflect the identities within our bookstore, right? And not apologize for my own identity and my own preferences and my own worldviews, while still answering and honoring my community. When community members and readers come to me and say, both, I love this book, you should bring it in. That's something I take very seriously. But when community members say this display seems to tell a story that is specific to the store, would you be willing to add to the story on this display? And I think when I take those comments most to heart, it's when they come from readers and or people who have had a life experience that is different than mine and that is impacted by a display that represents a life experience that is also important, but also perhaps in conflict with what the perceived display is. I'm probably being a little bit vague about that, but that's just me saying that part of our store's mission and many independent booksellers, I think, is to, in a bigger way, honor that experience of being seen and getting to have your story told. Because in our country and in our world, the systems of power do dictate that largely. And we see many ways in which people of privilege get to tell their stories, and those who don't. And that's part of how privileged is defined, right? And how history is just defined. So that if we are truly curious readers and thinkers and lovers of story, why do we keep wanting to hear the same one, right? Or the ones told by the voices who have always told the stories of history? Shouldn't we consider the fact that we will have a richer vantage on a fuller story of the human experience if we seek out proactively the stories of those who have been marginalized? And I affirmatively say yes as a reader alone, because it makes your awareness of the human experience so much richer and so much more entertaining and like just so much fundamentally better.
Yeah. I mean, you hit the nail on the head of why we read largely is to be able to hear about these other experiences that are so far outside our own. I've heard this phrase used here and there across several different book spaces. I don't know who coined it, but reading can be window and it can be a mirror. And both are so important. And I love that you are making space for both in your store, and that when people come to you and they say, hey, I have a window for you, that you allow space for other people to look through that window as well and make it a part of your store experience.
Very well said. I love that. It's basically, this is, you're able to curate that. And yeah, that was just something that's why independent bookstores are so important,
Yeah.
right? And especially finding one that, provides that sort of front table, like you said, that is something that it sounds like serves your community.
Okay. Our next question. I love this question and love asking booksellers. What is the most popular hand sold book at your store?
I know these questions about like the most popular. I answered this question, and this is a true answer based on both sales numbers and the number of booksellers we have at both of our booksellers who read and loved this book. Despite the fact that this book had its own traction and was written by a relatively well-known author, but the book itself is The Gals of November, and it's a nonfiction narrative telling of the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald, but that is a vastly simplified summary of what is a remarkable investigation into both the science and the majesty of the Great Lakes and the danger of the Great Lakes and the underestimated sort of power and import, both historically and economically, of all the Great Lakes, and also an intimate telling of what it was that built the Edmund Fitzgerald, this remarkable sea vessel that sailed on the Great Lakes and did very important work, and the story of the crew that was lost on this November day in 1975, and a horrible tragedy that is known in maritime history and was not known by me at all as somebody who grew up on the north side of Chicago, right? Not far away from where it took place. But the story of Edmund definitely has this mythical curiosity in Michigan, especially, and it's one that I've known well since having lived in Michigan. But it's not that alone. Part of that makes it an easy hand sell for us, but it's the fact that this book did, for the first time, such an amazing job of telling the truth of this story, but also offering a peek into the broader stories all around the sinking of this particular ship. And it wasn't about the sinking itself, though the sinking and the circumstances of the sinking were highly dramatic. And I've honestly never read in any story, fiction or non, uh, anything as sort of heart racing and disquieting as the segment of explaining exactly how this ship ultimately sank and was devastated. So I don't know if that fits for your readers, but I do read a lot of nonfiction. I will say that The Gals of November by John U. Bacon is one of the best narrative nonfiction books I've read in the last 5 years. His pacing, his clarity, his care, his empathy all shine in this book. And I think that's why part of what made it such a great hand sell was that booksellers could find a way to tap into any one of those things for any single reader. And also recognize there was going to be a whole segment of people who were going to read this just by its tagline, but that was nowhere near who deserved to read it, including me. I shouldn't even say this, that I was neither here nor there on the Edmund Fitzgerald. I really didn't know why I was supposed to care. And I didn't know that I did. And now I really do.
No, you can say that. You can say that. I am local to Michigan, and I have lived in Southwest Michigan for most of my life. And I did not know about this story. So my interests are piqued. And I love when a book recommended by a bookseller, by a bookstore owner, is something that is so local, but still has such a broad appeal. And it sounds like this is a perfect book for that. Anyone who really enjoys exciting narrative nonfiction will find something to enjoy here. It's great that it's so specific to this local area too.
I was going to say, you sold that so well, because I was like, what? I don't know what this is about. And then I looked it up. I'm like, oh, I'm deeply interested. I want to know what happened, especially, I think you're right. Narrative nonfiction is a good entry point for folks that tend to read more fiction. But yeah, that one is a great, like you said, local recommendation. Do you have any books that surprised you with how well they sold?
I mean, there's always surprises. Yeah. So I have to say, The Correspondent, gosh, that's for as much as I knew that quietly many, and I can picture them all, and they are frequent customers, many customers sort of quietly were mentioning this book. I still thought of it as its own little bubble, right? And I guess that's where you're always humbled in bookselling and in the bookstore experience, but that's where it was like, gosh, it was just this little bubble. It was just literally these women talking to each other, and I'm pretty sure it was just Lynn on her own in Kalamazoo, and I'm outing her right now, right? Like telling 5 of her friends, which then became 5 more friends and 5 more friends. So I was convinced. I'm like, okay, it's gonna stop, right? Like it's done, right?
Right.
It done what it needed to do, and I couldn't keep up with it. I really couldn't, and I don't know that a lot of people could, but it did throw me for a loop during what I take pride in being a season of, like, I've got this. I can predict it. I can get out ahead of what I see as the need and the curiosity around this book. So, and it continues. And that's where I was. And I think in part because the form of the book, right? The letters is not something that many readers of fiction, at least at the outset, are willing to take that kind of a form and be convinced that it's going to be a full story.
Yes, epistolary novels often give me pause too, because I'm like, I don't know if I'll like this, but I'm very tempted by that one because that one, like you said, has been everywhere, and I still see it recommended often.
That book got so much buzz this year, and I am so glad that it worked for so many people, because I don't think that it was a book that, at least I know in the spaces that I follow, I don't feel like I heard a lot of early buzz for that book. And then when it was published, it was like everybody was talking about it and loving it. Okay, my next question is, are there any recent trends that have surprised you? Whether that's, any like bookish tropes or authors that have, popped up and gotten popular, or just any kind of like bookish trends that have popped up that maybe you weren't expecting.
Hmm. I can speak better on the kids' book side for this, but and maybe
Yeah.
right, capybaras all of a sudden are trending.
That's so
They
funny.
really are.
I love this fact.
But because some of those kinds of quirky trends don't translate with bookstores, but certainly we do have many kids not just writing to read stories about capybaras all of a sudden, which I shout out to authors and publishers, we need more. But like nonfiction, like what do they really behave that way? Do they really right pile onto each
Right.
other? All these really sweet curiosities. So I mean that's a weird answer to that one, but I have to say I'm also kind of like
I love
weirded
that.
out a little bit, but I have to give it a try further it by the ways in which streaming romance is uh, is igniting right
Oh yeah.
a fierce passion to read the stories. I guess in part because, and
Mm.
this again, me as my own reader, and I only watched episode 1 so far of the one that I know that I'm referencing. But I was like, this feels like a really
Heated rivalry,
simple,
baby.
underdeveloped story, and maybe that's why people are
Sure.
like, oh, right, like it gets great eventually. I know it does. I believe it. But maybe people are needing to read the book so much because they want to get inside their heads a little bit more, which is how I felt very much when I watched episode 1. I was like, I have no idea what
Yeah.
either of you are thinking right now, and I need a little bit more information about this passion that's
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
blossom,
Yeah.
right? So
Mhm.
anyway, and keeping up with that, and sort of the variety of readers, because I think for us, at least as a store, we know our romance readers, and that's not to sort of typecast. That's to be like we do literally know them. We
Yeah.
know when they come in and what they're going to ask for and how to sort of guide them.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And we're seeing
That's
a
exciting.
broader age range with heated rivalry, and we're also seeing a broader everything, which also is fantastic. I absolutely love that
Mhm.
when sort of genre books that have their steady allies and their steady right readers broaden into this, like, okay, Uncle Larry's reading it now, right?
Fantastic. Good for you, Uncle Larry.
Right.
What
Oh, I love that.
what are your your romance readers. What do they like to ask for?
So a lot of our romance readers straddle right into fantasy. So, but they want a strong romantic narrative in that world building and sort of mythical abilities and all of those things. But the
Mhm.
romance and the satisfying romance, right? And I was interested in some of the questions or the stipulations some of your listeners made about
Yeah.
what romance and how to like
Mhm.
leave certain
Very
parts of that out.
particular. Yeah.
But I think at least for the ones that I know best, like the resolution and the
Mhm.
satisfaction of either the conjoined romance or like the hero feeling really satisfied by the end is largely important um
Mhm.
to the but yeah, so they're asking me, a lot of them are asking, like, if I'm reading Emily Henry,
Mhm.
who can I jump into, right? But
Mhm.
with more world building. Yeah, I guess, and for me, and this was one of my answers to your questions too. For me, it's like that genre reader who's willing to take the leap into what is branded as literary fiction, but needs to know that there's going to be some intense, like intimate scenes, which I love
Mhm.
Sally Rooney for,
Yeah.
Yeah.
or Gabrielle Zevin sometimes. So the ways that they ask me to sort of say, I really love intimate scenes, or I love relationship drama,
Yeah.
and I'm willing to jump into literary because that's what I tend to read a little bit more, or
Yeah.
contemporary, and yeah.
That's me. I'm like, I want mess. I want mess. I don't know. Spice is okay. Spice, if it's there, great. I want mess. But I'm not a romance reader. So not let me rephrase that. I don't need a traditional romance. I know romance readers have their Hannah, what's the word? Not formula, but the
Yeah,
requ-
I would call it a
a
formula.
formula. Okay. The,
Mhm.
the happily ever after, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes. I'm a little
Uh,
bit more of the traditional romance reader, but I
yes.
also love mess.
I
So
love mess. Yes.
I'll do both.
Right, right. Um, are there any books that are coming out in 2026 that you're very excited about?
So the book coming out next week, Vigil by George Saunders,
Mm.
Yes.
um, is something I cannot wait to get my hands on. It's one of the few big books that we did not get an arc on, and I love Saunders as a storyteller, as a writer, as a comfort, and I did not think I was going to enjoy Lincoln in the Bardo when I had been recommended it. I didn't think I was invested in the story of
Mm.
the death of Lincoln's son or anything about that period of history. It's not that it wasn't fascinating and pivotal, it just didn't necessarily feel like something that Saunders, for me, needed to write about. And I really loved that story and the way it was told. So the fact that he is carrying on the tradition of that book with Vigil um, and gifting us again with possibly very few words to tell a whole
Mhm.
lot about ourselves as human beings and as Americans is one that I'm very much looking forward to. Emma Straub's American Fantasy is on my radar. Lindy West's Adult
Oh.
Braces is a nonfiction book that Lindy for me has been somebody who consistently makes me believe that we as women matter,
Mhm.
Mhm.
as flawed and effed up as our world is. Like, we get to say the way things are, and we get to say it with humor and heart, and get ready for somebody to tell us that we can't say it. I really
Yes.
like her, and I think Adult Braces we're gonna see her a little bit more vulnerable than she's ever been with us, and I
Mm.
always appreciate that with authors I know. Um, yeah.
We're excited for Vigil too. That is, we every month we have a book talk, etc. community read with our patrons where we discuss it on our Discord, and that is our pick for February. And I cannot wait. I'm very excited about it. I also like that it's short. It's only 192 pages, so it's not,
Yeah.
but I just know
Mhm.
it's going to be. You're going to want to sort of pay attention to every section in that one. All right, so we will wrap things up as we typically do with our shelf editions. And shelf editions are books that have made their way into our homes lately, whether we bought it or whether we had it sent to us. Now, Joanna, you may not have a specific shelf edition, given that you're receiving new books, I'm sure, weekly. I will share though the book that I just grabbed as my recent shelf edition. It's Murder Your Darlings by Jenna Bloom. I was in Florida this week and went to an indie there called Writer's Block in Winters Park, Florida. Anyway, I always like to, visit a bookstore when I'm in a new place and make sure to buy something. And I'm so excited for this one because one, it's a thriller, which is my sweet spot, but it also ties into an upcoming episode that we're doing because I think this is going to be romantic suspense. It is a contemporary
Mm.
suspenseful novel about love, loss, and revenge in the world of books. So I'm like, yeah,
Mm,
sign me up. It sounds
mm,
like an author meets this very famous author, and things between them are not what they seem. There's a stalker involved, and frankly, I don't need much more than that. So I will be giving this one a shot very soon. And that's Murder Your Darlings by Jenna Bloom.
I haven't heard of that one.
No? Oh, yes. It was been
No,
on
I
my
haven't heard of
radar.
it.
I love the Speaking of titles, I love the title of this one. Obviously that's a famous quote that they
Mhm.
included in the top or in the opening of the book, but I just thought that sounded really interesting for us.
It does sound really interesting. Joanna, do you have a shelf edition that you want to share with us? Maybe something that you even brought home from the store to read that you want to share with us, or whatever you want to share.
yeah, and I guess right, and so it's not something that I've read yet, but it is on my radar and it is on my nightstand as an arc. I don't. This is horrible of me. I don't know if it's released. I don't think it is yet, but it
We'll
might
find
be.
out.
Gosh, am I a bookseller or not? It's called Meet the Newmans, and it
Oh,
is
yes.
right. I can check quickly.
It
If
did.
it's not yet
Yes.
released, it will be.
I'm
January
Right.
looking right
So
6th.
now.
Okay,
Yeah,
so it's a
it
new
just got
release.
published.
I still haven't read it, but it was one that was put in my hands by a trusted Macmillan rep, and the premise of this mid-century family who performs literally as the ideal family, and not just within the show that they broadcast, but in the lives that they literally pretend to have, and the ones that they are guided towards when they speak to the press or when they engage even in their private conversations, is fascinating and obviously ripe for conflict and trauma and anger on behalf, as I understand it, certainly the teenagers who are members of this family, and who are coming of age in a time when perfection and household sort of family structure, or the story of that, is so important to maintain the appearances of, a lot. So both the the television show that they are on and the real life family that they are made to inhabit, and that eventually implodes on several micro and then perhaps a macro level, is curious to me. And I want to know if the feel of that book feels like Pleasantville or other stories that I like, where
Mm-hmm.
the story of the making of a story on film or in TV also has a broader story that mimics the ways that we pretend to be the people we are
Mm-hmm.
in a broader social world.
Yeah, that one sounds really interesting. My shelf edition is kind of similar-ish to that one. I'm bringing Cruelty Free by Caroline
Oh,
Glenn.
yes.
This is also, I say similar because it's kind of set in this world of Hollywood, and it's about Lila Devon, who was a first year college student when she was kind of catapulted into Hollywood stardom. And then her life shattered and fell apart when her daughter Josie was abducted and then presumed dead. And then we follow her a decade later, post divorce, but she is still deeply struggling. And she returns to LA to launch a cosmetics company with her magnetic friend, Sylvie. And then their relationship deepens into romance, and the women channel their shared grief and rage into calculated quest for revenge against all those who failed Josie or profited off of her disappearance. I just think that this sounds really interesting. I love a revenge story, a story on female rage,
Hmm.
and those conversations around Hollywood and stardom as well. So I also love the cover of this one. I don't know if
Cover's
you
great.
two can see
Hmm.
it, but it's just a really sharp cover that is really doing it for me. And that is Cruelty Free by Caroline Glenn. I just got that in the mail today.
I just got it in the mail last week. Who knows when it came, but yes, it's like this face that's smashed up on a Xerox machine, I think,
Yep,
or up
yep.
against a window or something. But anyway, it's really good, and I'm interested in both of those novels. So we're gonna have to
Yes.
see what we end up doing. So before we go, we are going to actually record a little bit longer with Joanna on Patreon, where she will be giving personalized book recommendations that were requested by our patrons. So if you've ever wanted a bookseller to basically hand sell you your next read that's to your taste, that episode is for you. You can join us over on Patreon. We will have the link in our show notes. While we wrap here, listeners, if you are going to purchase any of the books that are mentioned today, we do ask that you purchase them from This Is a Bookstore, and we will link to their website below. Joanna, through your website directly, is that the best way for our listeners to support you?
It is to log into our website. I also have the URL for my book list that I generated, the curated book list, to respond to the recommendations that I can share with you after the event. But I can also link to it
Fabulous.
actively on our menu, so that your listeners in the coming weeks can navigate directly to that book list of my recommendations for this show.
Fantastic. That is
Perfect.
so kind. And we were complimenting your website before we started recording. It's really user friendly. So, listeners, definitely be sure to head over there. We will link it down below. Joanna, thank you so much for spending time with us today. We really appreciate it. We loved getting to know a little bit about your store and about Kalamazoo and for your recommendations. So, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
And that is it for today. We thank you, listeners, for spending a part of your day with us. Links to all the books mentioned can be found in the show notes. And if you enjoyed today's episode, you can help us by following wherever you listen and by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. It helps us get our show out to new listeners and grows our audience. And don't forget, if you'd like access to exclusive bonus content and community, including Joanna's book list, you can join us for $5 a month on patreon.com/booktalk, etc.
If you'd like to connect with us, you can email us at booktalketcetera@gmail.com. You can also connect with us both at Booktalk Etc. on Instagram and YouTube. You can find Tina at TBR Etc. and Hannah at Handpicked Books. Talk to you next week, and in the meantime, remember,
everything's better with books. As a sorority girl myself, I will be reading this ASAP. I had it suspended on my holds list for Libby, so I just went ahead and unsuspended it because I'm going to need to read that one as soon as possible.